Alan Williams, welcome to Business Insider.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Pleasure.
And we're pleased you're here and not your son. Although I'm sure he's going to be an excellent
A charming young man of 10.
Thank goodness you're here.
Yeah.
We appreciate your time. There is lots going on with Blink and everything else you're involved with. Through these interviews we try and get some insight into the recent history and what drives the man. We'd love to start there. If we looked at the last 5 years, you've come out into the commercial world again. Tell us some of the strategies behind that and what drew you out.
What drew me out? Boredom drew me out.
Yes.
No, I was, as you probably gathered from our previous chats, I spent most of my career in the computing world, obviously, and building businesses in the last 15 years or so. It's been a couple of big startups. They weren't big to start with, of course.
Actually, it's a contradiction. They were big finish-ups, weren't they?
They were big finish-ups. Well, actually, thankfully, they're not finished.
Yeah,
they carry on going on. And that's the beauty of a good startup. It gets bought, or it does an IPO, and you move on, and somebody else takes it to the next step. Because it's very unusual. You get the occasional companies like a Facebook, maybe, or definitely a Google or Yahoo, maybe, that last for a very, very long time. And I was just noticing that it was IBM's 100th anniversary just the other day, and they were talking about what makes a very, very long-term company. And most companies like ours, startups, don't ever get to that stage. They get consumed by one of these very, very long-term companies. But I think that's natural. I think it's the people who do startups don't usually like doing the big company thing. You get occasional individuals who make that transition. But most of us do the startup, love that sort of whole the adrenaline and the running around with your pants on fire feeling of a startup. And then once it is a bigger company, it's the right time to find the people who will grow it into a much more mature, long-term vehicle. And quite often that means getting bought by a company that does that.
Is capable of bringing
those
resources.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and really, some people think, oh, you're just selling out. Well, no. If a product is or a company is going to get its full potential, sometimes it needs that worldwide sales force or that big picture view of life that a larger corporation brings. And so the original founders often are very good at shaping a product or a service or a vision, but they get to a certain stage and then it needs that sort of maturity to take it forward. And I'm one of those people that start things up, and when it gets to a certain stage it is time to move on. So that's been a bit of a history here. And just to go back to your question, which is what drove me back into the business world, well, I had a couple of successful sellouts, if you will, or takeovers, and after the second one I did decide to sort of take it a bit more quietly for a while. And after a few years I realised that really wasn't me. And so I've gone back into the business world doing, and in fact one of the reasons for going back is that the thing about startups is you meet great people. I mean, it's the excitement of getting together with bright, ambitious people who want to do something new and fresh. And I must say I'd missed that. And so that's why I'm back.
Welcome back. Yes. Part of that, though, you still make the time for that development, and we might come back to that in a little while. But a major part is giving back, and community takes a significant focus with you. School boards and university development groups, I think. Is that a conscious decision, or you just feel drawn to give, or?
I think give is almost too strong a term. I mean, I think it's part of being in a community. If you're fortunate enough to be be a business leader or whatever, I think there's almost a requirement that you contribute to the local area, and contributing it can take all sorts of forms. It depends what your skills are, and mine are in helping to build business and to think through business issues. And so I tend to serve on boards and stuff like that. But I have got a passion for education, and part of that passion for education is that, especially in a place like the Central Coast, which isn't so well served, by education, and isn't particularly hasn't been an aspirational community so much. It's becoming so. I'm glad to say. The more people that contribute to providing routes for people to go through and examples and opportunities, the better. Because if we want to see this community succeed, you've got to invest. And so really it's in some ways it's an investment, and it's pleasurable as well. I mean, you want to see the region you're in succeed, and in an area like this where it is in a transition, has been for quite a number of years, from a fairly sort of countrified community in some ways when I arrived here 2 or 3 years ago, to now it has changed considerably. And I think it's the more you can contribute into that in your own particular way, the better.
Just on that educational side and the university side in particular, we've got the Regional Development Corporation investigating options for university campuses in Gosford and looking for some stimulus there. It's a multi-layered issue that we're faced with. I think we've got, in a similar size, I think they quote Geelong, a similar sized population, and they've got 20,000 students, and we've got 4,000 students here on the coast. Mind you, we send a lot to Newcastle.
That's the point. I mean, we do send a lot to Newcastle. I'm on one of the advisory boards at Newcastle University, and I used to be on the advisory board for the Central Coast campuses. And yes, it's right. Somebody who's finishing high school here will quite often look to Sydney or to Newcastle to further their education. That's kind of understandable. There's a sort of gravity about those places that draws people into them, and it's a challenge for the area. And I don't know that we have to worry about our students going to other universities, but I think we need to make sure that we do have an appropriate higher education establishment here. Whether it's in Gosford or not, I think is to some extent is a political decision. Yes. But one thing you do want is a strong local education system that caters to the local needs. And the local needs are somewhat different here. There are lots of people going back into education, which is a fantastic thing. This concept of being able to start at the community college, go through the TAFE system, and end up with potentially a doctorate. That whole pathway through education is something that's offered here that isn't necessarily offered very well elsewhere. And I think this idea of lifelong education can get a real...
Do we promote, is that... It's growing, I know the numbers are growing. At your level of satisfaction, mind you, nothing happens at a Williams level of satisfaction unless your pants are on fire. I think we've got that image. But I'd love to see more of that. I'm not sure whether, because I'm not in the target audience who can go to college or community college and then build through that. Are we doing enough to make people aware of that, do you think?
Well, the way you make people aware is by telling stories, by telling the true stories of people who are doing that. And yes, they are doing it. Probably not enough. We'd love to have, of course, in the community, you want people to take their education further at any time. That's a wonderful thing to do. And I mean, if you've got just a year 10 qualification, but want to go further after a break, you can do it here, and you can keep on going and going and going. And there's less of an issue about taking older people coming out of universities. I think that message is getting through. We're an ageing population. We have to take advantage of bright older people and ambitious older people and who want to move careers and things. We've got to become more accepting of that. One of the distinguishing factors in Blink is that we've got an interesting age mix. We've got people who are in their 50s and 60s even.
And wonderful workers.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. And we've deliberately hired a number of people who have got wise heads as well as the industry knowledge, and they're fantastic in the company. But we've also, on the other side of it, got younger guys coming out of university, I'm pleased to say, coming out of Newcastle University, who are also doing a great job. Where the gap is right in the centre, where they get to a certain stage, and just at the moment, a lot of those next stage jobs, those mid-management jobs and things, are in Sydney mainly in Sydney, sometimes in Newcastle. And then you get the people who want to have a good job, but a lifestyle, and then they come back into doing what we're doing.
I'm just thinking at this point we should put the other bookend in place, because we interviewed Matthew. Sorry, we interviewed Ben.
Yes.
Who our viewers should now see the other side. He's part of the under 30 group.
Yes.
Who have to who have to put the pants on fire out seniors, but a great mix. Also indicating I don't get out much at all. Yesterday, and I hope she's still there today, you've employed your first female.
Yes, yeah, Louise Monarch joined us today, in fact, actually.
Oh, right.
Yeah, she joined us this morning, and and that's been an ongoing issue for us, and one of the things that has made it difficult for us. We wanted to have a good mix of people, and of course we want a good gender mix, a good age mix. We want ideally a good ethnic mix as well. Very difficult to find around here. When I had a development group in Sydney, we had a terrific ethnic mix. From all over Asia, from different, just basically different parts of the world. Here, it's very much the one single type. It's mainly white Anglo-Saxon males who come to us,
which is very specific.
Which is very specific, and so yes, we're delighted to have our first female join us, and we hope that. That we can find more females. We want to have a good mixed workforce. I think it's very healthy to do that. I think the issue is that not enough women and girls are doing computing qualifications, and I think it's lost its sexiness. There was a time in the 90s, late 80s, 90s, when there were quite a lot of women going into the profession, and it was considered exciting and a place that women could do well, and it is a place that women can do well, but somehow the shine's gone off it, and I think it may have been the tech busts and things like that. Whatever's happened, the shine's gone off it, and it's a shame, because just at the moment, with the advent of mobile, all this sort of mobile revolution that we're part of, one of the most important things in that space is how it relates to you as a person, and in fact, women tend to be better at designing interfaces and doing stuff at that user interface level, and we'd love to find more talented women who would join our company.
Well, may Louise be the first of a significant rush.
Well, I hope so.
Yes,
I hope so.
So and you're a very thoughtful and controlled man. I like to offer our visitors a rant moment, and I hope you don't disappoint. I'm sure you won't. About things you'd like to change. If you look at the coast and
look at the coast.
Well, no, you can. And here's you can start anywhere. You can look at the coast and work up, or look outside and say, okay, well, this is what's got to change on a bigger story. Where do you want to go, Alan? So,
okay, two things then. On the coast, I mean, it's a beautiful area, and it still is. It's become more crowded over time. On the coast, I think, if we were able to have sensible forums and dialogues about planning and where we want to take the place, that didn't get all emotive about planning being bad and that sort of stuff. The fact is that we're a fairly close suburb of Sydney. Things are going to develop, but it should develop in a managed way that we're all comfortable with. And I'd like to see a much more mature discussion about planning and where the place goes. And with the councils coming on board very much more as a positive group together on that, because it is a remarkable place, but we are beset by a whole load of problems like overcrowded roads. The infrastructure is creaking a bit, and which it wasn't 20 years ago.
As I said, you're a control man. Infrastructure that's creaking a bit is just a tad of an understatement.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But thank you for that. Okay. And the councils need to know that it's not a hostile environment.
No, not at all. No, and I think it's engaging well with with state government, with the federal government, and actually trying to look at. And I know it's always difficult to do that, but certain other areas have done that successfully. And worked as a group to improve the whole area, and we really need to do that urgently. We've got real assets. The centre of Gosford is a remarkable. I mean, it's situated in such a remarkable place, and yet it's not living up to its potential, if I might use an understatement again.
Absolutely.
And there are many things that could be very positive moves forward there. On a wider basis, the thing that really worries me at the moment is our debasing of science and scientific inquiry in our society. It's one of the things that most worries me about Australia claiming to be a clever country and claiming to, you know, be a world leader in technology and science and everything. It will never do that if we have a situation where we don't understand what science really is. And the current, and it's not the only thing, but the current debate about climate science, whichever way you come to it, is showing a massive misunderstanding by our political leaders about what science is. Science being a process, not an opinion, for example. Being a well-defined process. That there's a method, that's a method, it has peer review, it has all these things. And I don't think our schools teach enough about what science really is, the scientific method, the benefits of it, how science relates to engineering, which is what I do and what we do at BiUC. How that whole mechanism works is such an important thing for a clever country to understand, and we don't.
Yeah. Have we, why has that happened? Is it a swing towards a social learning, or the social sciences, which is just extraordinary?
Well, no, I'm not sure. No, it's not to do with education per se. I think it's to do with the hijacking of science into political debates, and the media not fully understanding themselves how to best pitch science with, you know, and scientific results and that sort of thing within. In fact, it's a very highly charged debate about climate change at the moment. But and whichever side of that you sit, there is science underneath it which needs to be investigated and not just be hijacked into.
And there is a rigour.
And there's rigour in science. And in fact, whichever side you sit, science requires that you question it all the time. And it's such a when done well, the scientific method and that sort of thing finds its way into all sorts of debates, because it is the right way to do things, to encourage questioning, to encourage scepticism, those sorts of things, but then to come up with the best possible explanation for the way things are, which is the way that science is. That isn't finding its way into our general consciousness anymore. And there was a time, there still are many countries that can have sensible debates about things, including, you know, scientific facts and theories and that sort of thing, without debasing them into sort of name calling and things like that. And that kind of goes into the whole political debate as well. Our political debate is becoming childish in some ways.
Well, I was going to say stymied or stilted.
And that's, you know, if you let's get there, that's a real rant. but it is those are the sorts of things that worry me, because they're indicative of Australia. Is a remarkable country. There was a large Economist article about 3 months or 2 months back about Australia as a country, and it was one of their special reviews, and it said such promise, such huge promise, well managed, peaceful, but its level of political debate and its level of confidence in itself are not enough. And we can only do that by aspiring to do things well, and that includes talking about things well, having a proper structure to our debates, valuing science, all those sorts of things. And they're markers of a clever country. And I really hope that we regain that.
Well, I probably pushed it a little further. I don't know whether... I think it was a great catch cry, the clever country. But you do. You deserve... You either earn it... Well, I think my biggest issue, the very personal thing now, I think we've assumed that we've got it because we've got a whole heap of rich minerals in the ground. So aren't we a clever country? We can get those out. But without the debate and the rigour and the openness of that debate, I think it's a downward spiral, which I think you've alluded to already, so I don't know why I'm repeating it. Let's say, you know, in our little neck of the woods up here, that would, what you're suggesting is there is not enough discussion when we have a council seated in Gosford and a council seated in Wyong, and one saying, okay, well, we'll do this or we'll do that, without that openness of discussion. Should we as business people and as the community, broader community, be encouraging that discussion? Or
yes, I think we should demand sensible discussion and require it. And certainly as a business community, and I don't think we're a particularly cohesive business community. I mean, because it's a fairly there's quite different industries here. You've got very few high-tech industries like ours. You've got obviously a lot of tourism, and they probably do have more say in things. But as an industry group, we don't have a tremendous amount of say in the way things happen over here. And probably we shouldn't be over shrill about that, because there's a lot of other communities in the area as well. But we do need to make sure that we ought to expect that our elected representatives actually consult reasonably and look ahead rather than fighting with each other. And that's the thing that I'd really like to see a more coherent management of the area.
Yes, you be careful you get the opportunity to get into that area.
Oh, I don't think I'm qualified for that. I don't think they like people going around with their pants on fire in the councils.
We won't even go there. If we look at the push, and we've had a really exciting innovations festival, which is the third, and we're gathering momentum there. We've got groups like founders forums to look at investing in the state, in the region. Is that enough? Or what more can we do, I guess, to force this concept of innovation with some scientific rigor, or what else is it?
Yeah. Well, innovation essentially comes down to people. I mean, it's it's finding people who have ideas or encouraged to have ideas, and there are plenty of them coming out of universities. But mostly in Australia, there is less of a business innovation culture certainly in new areas than there are in places like the US. And a part of that is just the culture of investing. In the US, if you come out of Stanford or Berkeley.
Talking about Stanford, there are venture capitalists there that are waiting on their doorsteps for great ideas. We don't have that same market environment out here. But is there stuff that we should be doing there to encourage
Well,
that?
part of it is having people realise that when they have ideas, there is a way to get those funded, and for investors to know that when you do venture funding, you don't get 1 in 2 or 1 in 1. It's not a safe bet when you do venture funding. You do venture funding, and 1 in 10 goes really, really well, and hopefully that 1 in 10 pays you off. And unless you've got people who are willing to take those risks
And understand
those risks, and realise that you don't just put the money up, you've actually got to put in input that you've got to. For some of those people, they have no idea how to run a company. So you tend to, around those places where you get venture capital sloshing about, you do also tend to get people who understand about incubating companies. Certainly the first of the companies that I brought over here, Technicron, grew out of a business incubator in Palo Alto, just on the back gate of Stanford. Tibco, which obviously was the bigger one that I brought over here, was a result of that same thing, but Reuters allowed us to spin it out of what they bought when they bought Technicron. We spun out outside of Reuters, and it required going back to being a startup again, and people willing to sacrifice. I mean, in that situation, we had a load of managers who were earning plenty at the sort of Reuters taken over Technicron business, who slashed their salaries, took on risk, and went for it with Tibco. And it's worked. It did work. With Blink Mobile, same gig. We've got people who, the 4 directors when we started, we worked for essentially nothing for the first year in order to get the thing going. And that's the thing with if you're going to encourage the gazelles, first of all, you've got to have the right risk appetite of the investors. The people who are involved have got to know that they're going to get a reasonable amount of their company if they get off the ground. But it's not going to be times of milk and honey until they get it off the ground. And then once they get it to a point where it can take off, they can get the next level of funding and be shown where the mezzanine funding is going to be, the funding that's going to take them from the first few customers out into the big world with marketing and that sort of thing. And also to know that there are people they can go to for advice. And those are all the ingredients. It's no one ingredient, it's a whole series of ingredients that need to be mixed together to make a successful field, if you will, for startups.
And it is a flow, isn't it? When you talk like that, there is a cascading effect, and if it gets damned by the smallest twig or whatever, it can be a real inhibitor.
Yeah, well, we're really fortunate with Blink Mobile. I mean, we had the capital anyway. You know, it was one of my investments to start with. You know, from a venture funding point of view, we've got very senior directors coming in. Tony Harris used to run SAP over here. Darren Besgrove ran his own very successful PR company, and those sort of skills. And of course, you know, Ben was the young Turk with all the bright ideas. Together, that makes a pretty potent combination, because Ben's ability to create technology was, you know, had alongside it Darren's knowledge of PR and advertising, Tony's knowledge of, you know, the big end of town, and my ability to, you know, to get startups really going, and that makes a difference. So it's access to the right people.
Yeah, and it's feeling comfortable to talk to those people as well.
That's right.
And I hope if we've done one thing today, Alan, you don't mind if I call you Alan? Alan Williams, we have brought you a little closer to a few more thousand on the Central Coast, that if they feel enthusiastic, they can either come on Business Insider and present a proposition for discussion openly, and we're keen to do that. Thank you for your time.
Okay,
and
pleasure.
We'll really appreciate it.
Okay,
Really
thank you, Mark.
Thank you.